In the 10 years since the Isla Vista massacre, the debate over gun control and mental illness has only intensified. One man who knows that best is Richard Martinez, who we just heard from. He lost his only son, Christopher, that horrific night. He shares a powerful message as he sees an ominous subculture spreading across our country.
Shots fired, shots fired. And we have 30 down on the corner of Segovia and go north.
Live in Isla Vista on El Embarcadero.
3 ambulances here.
Multiple people injured. Multiple law enforcement agencies are out here.
Too many have died. We should say to ourselves, not one more.
Richard Martinez has become the face of grieving parents all across the country.
Not one more. Not one more.
His prominent role with Everytown for Gun Safety has connected him with countless survivors of gun violence.
I've heard thousands of stories at this point. It's been my job over the past several years to help them tell their stories.
We met with Martinez near his home on the Central Coast, the same one he's lived in for 30 years. During our interview, we also found out that he's been driving his late son's car, and he keeps Christopher's artwork close to his heart. Martinez is wary, though, about a growing mindset he sees among too many young men.
I've been thinking about what happened in Isla Vista and what's happened since. I'm less interested in the specifics of the Isla Vista shooter. I don't even name him. I read in a newspaper article that he's the patron saint of incels.
Men who are involuntarily celibate. Statistics show the majority of mass shooters are men or teenage boys, many who'd worked or spent time at the scene of the crime. Some of the killings were racially motivated. Other shooters, as we later learned, felt alienated or ostracized by society. Some had expressed feelings of inadequacy or repulsion in the eyes of women, as was the case with the 22-year-old Isla Vista killer.
Other killings here in our country and in other countries that have cited Isla Vista as inspiration. The Isla Vista killer put out a manifesto talking about his misogyny and retribution, wanting to kill young women. That's what he intended to do. He went to a sorority that night with the intention of killing young women, and when they wouldn't let him in, then he, shot the three young ladies outside the sorority, and then driving through town shooting, and that's when Chris was killed.
Martinez is convinced the IV gunman was on a suicide mission like many other mass shooters. He attributes growing gun violence to a subculture of incels and misogyny.
This idea that women owe you something and that men are superior to women, people who, for whatever reason, feel humiliated, that's often the driving emotion, and are seeking revenge.
Not one more! Not one more!
Not one more was Martinez's mantra since Chris died. So this dad is now on a mission to fill the void, to offer fatherly advice in the form of a book.
The first half of the book is if I was sitting with Chris and telling him about what happened in the weeks prior to his death, and what happened that night, and then what's happened since. Then the second half of the book is if I had a chance to talk to the killer before he began killing, what would I say to him? What would I say to a young person who's decided to kill themselves? Because that's what it was. Isla Vista was a suicide. That kid decided, he gave up.
In the 10 years following Christopher's death, Martinez is often seen standing among the growing throngs of law enforcement and grieving parents, mourning yet another mass shooting and suicide.
We haven't done enough to help our young people understand the ways in which the world has changed and help them find ways to operate. There are more guns than people right now in the United States. More guns in more places is not the answer to gun violence.
But Martinez says he sees small steps towards progress.
Stronger gun laws work. States that have stronger gun laws have less gun violence. In 2022, Congress passed a bipartisan Safer Communities Act. That was the first gun violence prevention legislation that passed Congress in 30 years.
And here at home, Martinez praises local mothers, making a difference for a whole new generation.
So I worked in San Luis Obispo with the Moms Demand Action. You know, there's a really active Moms Demand Action chapter in Santa Barbara.
Martinez hopes that a fleeting wave of hatred is smothered by a parent's love for their child.
A reporter once asked me, would Chris be surprised at what you're doing? You know, my activism on gun violence. And I said no, because if the situation was reversed, he'd be doing the same thing.